All right, so we are back and we have Olama running. I didn't turn anything off. If you want to stop them, it's pretty easy. Just stop them. But we do have this running now. I got to point out that I am also recording at the same time. Which if I pull this over, this pulls from my GPUs, and so I might switch over to my AI PC at some point here, just because I need the GPUs here for recording. But if we don't have any issues, I'm just going to stay over here. We might also try to there are like setups for the mega services that I would like to try on the AIPC later on. But right now, I'm just going to, again, keep my setup as simple as possible. So we have the Docker Compose file in here, and we have the Olama server. I'm just going to leave it alone. I just don't feel like downloading the model more than once here. But I want to go back over to here, and I want to see what is our next step, right? So we have our LLM server running. And so now we need to front it with something. And so we'll go back over to wherever that was. Just a moment. All right. And we're looking, it's either the LLMs or the LVLMs. I forget the difference between these two services. I always get them mixed up. So let's open this one first and read a little bit about it. This microservice leverages LangChain to implement summarization strategies and facilitates LLM interface using text generation. Interface on Intel Xeon or Gaudi 2 processors. You can set the backend as either TGI or VLLM. So then we'll go over, this is LLMs, we'll go over to this one here. This is the visual question and answering. It is one of the multimodal tasks empowered by the VLLM. Okay, so this is large vision models, right? So that's large vision models. So what we're finding out here is that the LLM microservice is suggesting that it only works with those ones. But what I'm going to do is go over to here, because I don't necessarily trust the docs, as they're always evolving this product. And so if we go into this one here, let's take a look at what we have. This has source, and it has multiple options. We have FAQ, text generation, doc summarization. Text generation is what we want to do. And what we're looking at here is the entry point file and the Docker file. So the Docker file is going to tell us what we can do here. And it's running Python Slim. And we can see that it's installing some libraries. It's adding a user here. I'm not sure what user, but it's adding the home user, just called user. It's bringing home user comps, so it's making a folder and copying comps into it, which is this folder here. So it's copying the contents of it. And then what it's doing is it's bringing in the text generation requirements.txt file. So whatever's in here is getting installed. And then what it's doing is bringing the text generation stuff in here. And then it's launching endpoint.sh. So if we look at this and we go into here, we can see that it's running OPEA LLM microservice. So it's just this file here. And if we look at this, the question is there anything that is specific to Intel Xeon processors? Because so far, I'm not sure. I don't see it. But we have Intel 8.HPU, so that's probably for Gaudi. But this one here probably will run, at least on my computer it will, on this. Now, again, if you really want to run this, like with a guarantee, you could just launch up an Intel Xeon processor, the MI7. You don't need a large, but you need something that would be an Intel Xeon, at least Xeon 4 processor on AWS. But I'm carefully looking at this here, and it's installing OpenTelemetry. Again, that's not specific to this. It's just an open source tool. It has this API protocol template here. And what I'm looking for here, see, it can route to Bedrock if you want to use Bedrock instead. We have OPA text gen native, so it wants to use a native one for generation. And so what I'm carefully looking for here is I'm trying to understand, because I know it will work like no problem with TGI. But I'm trying to figure out how we're going to connect that over to Olama, right? So I have LM generate, that's fine. It starts here. Okay, so let's go back to the README here. You can see there's a few different ones. We have Bedrock, Native, and whatever. But we'll go over to here and we'll say microservice design for language model interface. A prerequisite for this microservice is that you must have LLM text generation service TGI or VLM already running. Users need to set the LLM service endpoint into the variable endpoint variable. So that's all it needs. It just needs to know where the endpoint variable is, and then it can interface with it. It's suggesting TGI and VLM, but I think it really depends on what the standard of the API is. And so I'm not sure if TGI and VLM standardizes on the same one. So what I'm going to do is go back over to here, into my README here. And so I have a question, which is, this is the answer here. So our question is for the LLM for the LLM service, which can do text generation, it suggests it will only work with TGI or VLLM, and all you provide it is the port number of the, like, all you have to do is have it running. So maybe so you know what I'm saying? So, first of all, does TGI and VLLM have a standardized API, or is there code to detect which one is running? Do we really have to use a Xeon or a Gaudi processor? Because to me, it doesn't seem like we would have to, right? These are just generic services. There's nothing inherently specific. When I was using OPA, it said like, oh, you can only use these models, validated models, but you could run Llama 3.21 billion. We are running Llama 3.21 billion, but you'll see here in the information here, it's a bit not updated. Okay, so here they're saying if you want to use the LLM, refer to the VLM to build the VLM Docker image first. So prepare the text gen Docker image. Start the LLM service with build image. Set up the environment variables and run the Docker one. Now, I don't believe that we need a TGI like Intel Xeon processor. So, again, I think it has to do with compatibility, but let's go into this code here. And what I'm looking for again is what's the thing? What's the thing here that's saying it has to be VLM or TGI? Right? So I'm looking here and I'm trying to find that thing. So it has register microservice here, @, LLM, auto completion. And so I'm just carefully trying to find that specific one. So we have native over here. And so this is kind of where I want to open up the code and start to ask questions. And so this is where I'm going to start leveraging Windsurf. So what I'm going to do, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to see if we can ask Windsurf. And again, you can use whatever you want. But I'm going to go ahead and clone this. So this is in Windsurf. Very easy to install. I'm not going to show you how to install it. You can go to the Windsurf website. I think we have it in the GenAI Essentials. And I'm just going to go do a git clone here. And I'm going to clone the GenAI comps folder. And I'll just say yes here. Permission denied. Why? It's an open source repo. I'm going to go ahead and try this again. Copy. I'm going to do in VS Code just to rule out if it's a Windsurf thing. And I'm going to go back here and say git clone this one. There we go. And once that's cloned, it'll pull all the stuff out. Maybe we can just ask questions and say, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on here? Great. So I'm going to go back over to Windsurf. I'm going to go ahead and say file folder open. And I'm looking for in here, GenAI comps. I'm going to open up the entire comps folder because in case there's something that's cross-referenced, I want to have it here. And so what we want to know more about is this LLM thing here, this folder right here. And so I have over here this. I'm going to just restart and update before we get going here. I know that for some of my boot campers, if they see an update button, it stresses them out. And to be honest, when I'm on a call with somebody and they have like low battery, I'll like say like, hey, you got to go fix that right away. Because it'll never take my attention off of that. Because we're developers, we are focused on the details, right? So I'm waiting for Cascade to open up here. It's open. And so I need to know a bit more about what's going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and just say file. I actually want a directory. So say directory LLMs, right? And so I actually just want to have a conversation with it. So I'm going to cut this out, go over to here. And I'm going to say, you know, this folder allows us to deploy a container service. It says it only works with TGI or LVLLM or LVLLM. It's LLM, so it's VLLM. What part of the code tells us this is true? Okay, and let's see if it can kind of figure it out. With these tools, I always try to give it the fewest amount of folders so it gets less confused when it's looking. But searching through the whole code base, which I don't really want it to do, and that's why I kind of wanted to show that direct folder. But there might be, I don't think there is a shared folder, but if there is one, I just wanted to do that here. And so let's see if it can kind of help us out here. Based on the code, I can confirm the container service indeed works with TGI. This evidence is in several key places. So here it has the open text gen service, which is over here at integrations under service. It has a clear doc string. Documentation method signature in various integration files consistently with TGI VLLM. There are specific TGI classes. So that's what we're looking for. So if we go under integrations, is there one for let's look for it here. Docker compose, source. So I mean, this is doc and fact generation. I only care about text generation though. So if we go to text generation, we have integrations. It doesn't say TGI. So I'm going to go back here and say, you know, I'm only interested in performing text generation. What indication? How would it know where the TGI server is running? And, you know, wording really matters here. I'm not wording this very well, so if it fails, it's kind of my fault here. But while that's going here, we'll open up the service.py. And we see OPEA LLMs, because this is the thing that it's saying it's serving, right? And it's interesting, it has some defaults here, but it has port 8080 as the LLM endpoint. So that's kind of interesting. So again, I don't see anything that says in particular that it's either or, right? So based on the code and documentation, here's how the service TGI is running. The service looks for the TGI service endpoint as environment variable. I think we just saw that there. Oh, here we go. Initialize component here. So it says, we can see the function calls get LLM endpoint, right? But we just saw ourselves, right, that if we go up here, that's there as well, right? And it's defaulting to 8080 for some reason. So that's that there. So we have LLM endpoint, and it says TGI LLM endpoint. So this is the location is variables through this. So maybe there is a TGI LLM. This is what I want to find out. Where's this? We'll just put TGI. I don't see this specific one. If none of them are set, this is used. Where in the service.py, in the, we'll say file service.py, are you seeing TGI LLM endpoint? I don't see it. Are you sure? Is Claude Sonnet messing with us? Okay, so there's only one LLM endpoint, right? So now the next question is, does VLLM and TGI have the same API? I'm not sure what it's trying to search for. Okay, and so that's interesting. I'm going to go back over to Claude over here. And so what I want to know, does VLLM and TGI have very similar, similar or the same API schemas? So if you wanted to swap one for another, you could. And so this is what I'm trying to get at. And then the question is like, can OLAM have the same things? Let me think about this. As the last update, have similar but not identical APIs. They both aim to be compatible with OpenAI style formats. Okay, so you can see here, for example, there's a bit different. So, you know, let's go ask Perplexity because this is what I want to find out. Perplexity is a search engine, but we're trying to figure out, do they all have similar APIs? So VLLM, TGI, and OLAMA all have APIs. Where are their API schemas? How similar are they? The reason I want to use Perplexity is it goes out to the internet. I'm not using a paid version. I'm actually just using free right now. So it says with the okay, so VLM, TGI all offer API compatibilities, making them easy to integrate, right? So they, if they're the same, then why can't it use OLAMA? It seems like it should be able to. So I'm going to go back over to our VS Code one. So in theory, they should be interchangeable, right? And we'll go back over to here. And so we have these three. And so, yeah, if they're standardizing on that thing, then in theory, we should be able to use OLAMA with LLM. So we're going to make our way back over to here. And I'm going to save this file. And so now I just have to think about this, that if we're going to run that LLM thing, we just have to tell it where it is. That's it. So I'm going to go back over to here. And this is a little bit trickier because we have to pull in a bit more code. I really only want to pull in the component that I need. I don't really want to pull in everything else. I'm not sure if we can get away with this, but I'm going to try anyway. And we'll try to bring in that individual code. So I have GenAI comps here as a folder over here on the left-hand side. And we have this entire directory of comps. But the question is, will it reference anything outside of it? Because there is cores. And it could reference cores. So the question is like, what's the minimal stuff that we need to bring in? And it might be cores, but right now I don't know. So what I'm going to do, this is a bit sloppy, but I'm going to go ahead and just grab, why do we have a top level Docker file? I'm thinking maybe just grabbing comps and bringing it over. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about this. Let me think about it for a second, okay? All right, you know, I was thinking about, we could actually just ask it, Windsurf, like, what is the minimal amount of files we need to bring in? So I'm gonna go back over to here. I'm gonna start a new conversation. And I wanna tell it that, you know, I want to use the code in the, what's the directory called? This is a directory. I can't see it right now. That sign. LLMs, do that. But I need to know what other folders are absolutely necessary to run this code. Do we need to bring in cores folder? What is the bare minimum? Other folders at the same hierarchy level, at the directory level, I have to bring in. Because that's what we don't know, right? And so we'll let it figure it out here and give it a moment. This actually might be in the docs. We just have to read a little bit about it. So while that is going, so it says contains core components like OPEA component, core. So this is what I thought, and LLMs. Yeah, that's all we probably need. Let's go take a look here for a second. There is a knit.py here. Oh, right. So maybe our approach should be a little bit different. Because if these are all like this, then we can just import all of these components if we want to reference them. But right now I just want to run them and stick them together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to here, and I'm going to go to the OPEA dev. And just give me a moment to see if I'm just really cutting this up in a weird way and see if there's a better way to do this. We'll be back in just a moment, okay? All right, so here's where my confusion is, right? They have this article here. They explain about the architecture. And so one thing we can do is we can install the components via a pip, which actually I really like, OPA comps. We can also just pull down the source. Now I can pull out those folders and we can make it work in isolate, so we're only shipping exactly the code that we need. But down below here, they're showing that they have a file. So they say a microservice can be created by using a decorator register microservice and taking the embedding microservice as an example. And so the idea is that we are bringing in the comps here, and then we use a decorator to define it. But what I don't understand is how is it going to orchestrate all these things? Because these are all individual containers. Is this going to spin up containers if I run this file? And that's what I'm trying to figure out. Again, there's no information that I can find directly on here. There's probably somewhere, but that's the trick, is to try to find that information. So maybe that's the route that we need to go down here. So I'm just trying to decide here. I mean, one thing that we learned, which was interesting, is the fact that the APIs are very similar. So if we were to start up one of these things, we know that they should have good operability here. And so OLAM is still on the table here. TGI is still on the table, despite it talking about the other architectures here. So maybe what we should do is we should really be trying to get this thing to work and then observe if it actually spins up containers. Because if it does in a single file, that'd be really, really cool. But I would have thought that this would have to be, you know what I mean? Like you construct your own your Docker file, which we can still do, but I'm trying to adhere to trying to save time based on the way that they have it laid out here. So let me try that next. I'm going to stop the video again. And this video is basically just we learned about the different kinds of things here and we explored the code, which is fine because in Developer Week, I want to show you how you can use stuff to investigate code. But yeah, we'll try to figure this out next, okay?